dance till the sunlight cracks. And when they say the party's over, then we'll bring it right back. And we'll say, I love it when you do it like that. And when you're closer, give me the shivers. Oh baby, you wanna dance till the sunlight cracks. And when they say the party's over, then we'll bring it right back into the car. On the backseat in the moonlit dark. Wrap me up between.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here for this discussion on crowdfunding and renewable energies in the time of the European market. I'm Christophe Connille. I'm in charge of Youth in Finance. It's a non-profit initiative that encourages people from the financial sector to support innovation, including through crowdfunding. And also recently president of MetaOps, that is an observatory of the metaverse, co-founded by Finance Innovation under the impulsion of Paris Europlace. I'm pleased to welcome today our expert guest, Coenraad de Vries, Laure Verhaeghe, and Markus Schwaninger. I will articulate this discussion in three parts. The first one to discuss models of crowdfunding and their relevance, their point of attention. The second one to discuss the changes with regard to regulation and their main challenges, and then discuss about renewable energies at the level of citizens regarding crowdfunding platforms. So I will start to ask them to introduce themselves shortly, maybe. It would be nice to start, and then we will speak about models. And my first question will be, from your perspective, what is the model that you have mainly chosen for your own activities, and the relevant point of attention in your activities that will have to be taken into account for the next step of discussion, the harmonization? Maybe Coenraad, can you start sharing with us?
Yeah, no, thank you. My name is Coenraad Vries. I'm the founder of Startgreen Capital and also Oneplanetcrowd. We've been active in this market for the last 10 years, doing mainly early stage venture capital and early stage energy projects, financing. And as Oliver said, that is all in the movement that we want to democratize capital. We are sort of bored that the nice venture capital deals go to the private banks or the high net worth individuals. So we see, why not try to have a model where you could divide and make other citizens also step into early stage companies. And on the land we saw that energy projects were also owned by big project owners, and why not share it with the citizens living around. And that's still our two financial models. So we finance early stage companies and early stage energy projects, and we, especially on the renewable side, we do a lot of subordinated loans to make the project possible. So we usually finance together with the bank, who does the senior loan, and we do the junior loan or a bit of the equity to make sure that the people living around the solar field, the wind park or the biomass is also involved.
Thank you, Coenraad. Laure?
I am Laure Verhaeghe. I am the co-founder of Lendosphere, which is a crowdfunding platform dedicated to energy transition. We created Lendosphere in 2014 at the beginning of the crowdfunding in France, and we dedicated the platform to the financing of renewable energy project. At the beginning, to involve local people, to create a tool to involve them and to get them involved in the project with the interest and the return they could get from their investment. And we do mainly loan at every stage of the project, from development to exploitation. And it's a project developed by industrial actors, so from SMEs to group company, big companies, which are looking for mainly for local interest and more for a real finance acceleration for the project. So we do campaign from 50,000 euros to 8 million, which is still the threshold of the French regulatory context here before we get to 5 million, and we will speak about it later. Mainly loan with a 7% return, and we do lots of communication and lots of local presence around the project that we launch online. Lendosphere is nowadays 180 million euros invested through the platform on 4,000 projects, mainly wind turbines, solar panels, biogas, biomass, hydroelectricity a little bit, and heat network also. And it's a community of 25,000 people, which is increasing more and more because what we do with the renewable energy sector is that we answer a very strong demand of the investors, which is how can I combine rentability, return on investment, and a sense in my investments.
Markus, I think you have an original model to explain to us.
Yeah, hello, also from my end. I'm Markus, co-founder and CFO of Ecoligo, and to Christophe's point, I think we are kind of the exotic player here, and that is coming from two facts. First of all, where do we implement the project? So as the name of the session says, we do renewable energy projects, mostly solar PV, and we implement these projects in emerging markets. So that is, for example, in Kenya, Ghana, Costa Rica, Panama, Vietnam, Philippines, so very rather from a European perspective, rather exotic markets. But why do we focus on these markets? The answer is quite simple. In these markets, you don't have established capital markets like we have here in Europe. So if you want to do a solar project and put it on a factory roof in Kenya, for example, the company cannot simply go to a bank. So there needs to be other alternatives. And we have identified this finance gap because typically you have institutional investors that do the multi-million-dollar projects for everything from 20 million onwards. But the majority of interesting projects where you have the power demand at a factory can be, for example, an elevator factory that we are supplying in Vietnam. You are having the demand there, but you don't have investors wanting to, institutional investors wanting to invest in these single projects. So we have identified this gap and have said, let's finance this in an alternative way via crowdfunding. That's how we started our journey. For that purpose, we have set up a platform in Germany where we raise the money to implement then the projects. We take care of the projects on crowd, so we also do the asset management and raising money through our own platform, but also working with other platforms such as Trine, the Swedish platform, where we are also raising funds for our own projects. In terms of what the crowd investors get and what they invest, so it's not an equity investment, they give us a loan. Why is that? I think that goes for all solar projects, irrespective of where they are in the world. Solar projects give you a stable return over a long period of time, so it fits very well to financing it via loans. That's what we are applying. I think the principle of working with loan makes it also very easy for retail investors, because they know they invest money, get a fixed interest rate. In our case, the interest rate is also not fluctuating, so it's really fixed, really simple financial product for them to understand and to invest in.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you all. So, based on your experience for renewable energies, what is, from your perspective, the evolution, the emerging model that is best suitable for renewable energies? Markus, you are very much focused on solar panel. It's a main activity you are identified, and you are working internationally. Coenraad, I know you work very closely with banks, with junior, senior banks. And Laure, I know you pay a lot of attention to communication to investors. It's quite a religion on your side, based on a lot of good practice. Based on your experience, how do you see this evolution?
Shall I start?
You can.
So I think, I have, of course, very much the emerging market perspective. And here I'm really seeing that there is an opportunity to go into decentralized solar PV, because you don't have the same grid infrastructure that you have here in Europe. So if you go really the path that we have done here in Europe, building centralized power stations, you need to build all the grid infrastructure with it. And I think there's a big opportunity to use solar PV as a means to really produce the power where the demand is, and not needing to build a big infrastructure, not needing to take 10 years until a big solar wind farm is built and the transmission lines and everything is built. So I think this makes solar PV quite powerful. It's also super simple in maintaining it, so it's very easy and fast to deploy technology. And I think that is also what we all need at a climate crisis, that things go fast, that we can action things very, very fast.
Yeah, for us, I think the biggest issue is actually for clean energy is that it needs a lot of room. It needs a lot of landscape. You need to place them somewhere, right? The windmills, the solar fields, the biomass factory. So, and if you bind it together, then you need some sort of involvement of the local community with the energy production. Otherwise, there's more resistant. It's also much more annoying if you are having your wind park, close by, and all the money goes to some sort of investment firm in London or Frankfurt, or so we really believe in the way that you can have a direct investment and direct involvement of people living around the park, and that's not only good for the involvement. It's also good because if people know how difficult it is to make energy, they also use less. I mean, there's another way of using your energy. You can have lots of great models where you combine returns with energy use. So that's I think a really strong power in all of Europe. I mean, some countries are bigger than the Netherlands, of course, so there's a bit more room, but still, you need a place to park these wind parks. What I see, at least in the Netherlands and also a few other Northern European countries, that there's more a government obligation that if you do a wind farm or you do a solar field, that you need to have public participation. Because if you don't put it in laws, or you don't put it in the tender, or you don't put it in these restrictions, then money goes always to the cheapest. So then probably the project developer thinks, well, why should I do that? This local involvement, it's a lot of bother, and I can find financing means anywhere else. So I think the political move would be more on making this an obligation, that at least 20% of the park is owned by the local people.
Okay. Laure, what do you see as an emerging model, and would you have an example to share with the audience?
We can on Lendosphere and on our platform have different models of financing, and we can cover different needs of the project owners. First of all, the historic one is the local involvement, because it's crucial for project to get local involvement, to get a good and harmonized development, and to be constructed in 2 to 5 years and not 10 years. We don't have time to put 10 years to build a wind turbine park. So local involvement is the first step, and then crowdfunding is now a very competitive and very reactive way of getting money for the project owners. And this is the big issue of the 2 to 3 last years, is the growth of the crowdfunding communities, crowdfunding investors that are now able to give loans to 2 to 5, 6, 7, 8 million to the project to accelerate the construction, to give money to the project before the bank is doing the closing. So it's a way to accelerate the energy transition. And we really need crowdfunding in the landscape of financing tools to accelerate, to give local involvement, and to do a kind of European conscious of the crucial need for renewable and local way of producing energies. This is what the energy crisis of 2022 made relevant, is the need in Europe for a very strong and independent energy production and clean. This is why the European Commission led to the Fit for 55 regulatory framework and the REPowerEU after the Russian crisis. So crowdfunding is now not only the little nice stuff that we put to make people happy in the countryside. It's a real and very efficient tool of financing the project.
Thank you very much. Is it possible from you to briefly share an example of project you have financed? I think it's important for the audience. Markus?
Sure. So what we are supplying is commercial and industrial clients in emerging markets. That could be, as the example that I gave earlier, an elevator manufacturer in Vietnam, can be a flower farm in Kenya that we have financed. We have financed private hospitals in Ghana. It's wine producers in Chile. So there's really all sorts of different clients, ranging up to toilet seat manufacturer in Vietnam. So also really exotic things that are done, but it's basically mostly agricultural sector, manufacturing sectors, like rather the bigger industrial companies that have a high power consumption, and therefore also a good business case for solar PV because to offset basically their current power consumption.
Okay, so it's not restricted to the industry.
Say again?
It is not restricted to the industry sector. It's much wider.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in general commercial industrial companies. Whatever they do, we of course select them carefully. So we have our financial due diligence process that we apply to each and every company, where we check the last audited financial statements. We try to get a general sense of the company, how they are performing, because in the end, they're not getting a loan from us, but we are installing the solar system and we are selling them solar power. But we still need to make sure that the company is also still there in a few years, because we want to sell to them long-term solar PV, and that's why we run quite careful due diligence on them. And yeah, and so far our track record proves that this is right. So we had 0
Markus,
defaults.
we have to interrupt you a bit. I'm conscious of time. Coenraad.
Yeah, in both our financial products, maybe two concrete examples. We financed in the venture capital side Fairphone. I'm not sure if people know that. Fairphone is the first cellular cell phone, and we did that with approximately 3 million, I think, in crowdfunding money. And it's now recently stepped new investors in, and the crowd could step out or either go with the new investor to the next round for growth. But these are companies we finance. And on the project side, we have done lots of solar fields in the Netherlands or wind parks where we have local involvement together with the bank. So I could have a whole list, but I think that there's also a bit of the same. It's like local energy corporation wants to employ and have local attractiveness in the park, and then we step in to make this crowdfunding possible.
Okay, Laure.
From one end of the scope from another, we did like little crowdfunding campaign from 50 to 100,000 euro for local investment in the early stage of the project. In this case, we have Maison Mère. We have a guarantee of the mother company to be sure that the investors will be reimbursed whatever the development of the project. This kind of campaign, they are exclusively open to local people. So you need to have your home in the region to be able to invest in this type of campaign. And from on the other side, we made it's online right now, 8 million investment in loan in a company that is dedicated to the construction of the project, solar, wind, and hydro project. So it's 8 million loan, which is structured with a mother company guarantee also, and which is on 3 years' time. So, and every project has his own due diligence, his own structuration, his own contract, and the investor, they can choose on the platform the project they want to invest in, and they do their own portfolio and with the ability to get from 2 to 5 years maturity, from 6 to 8% return, and to really combine the project in which they want to invest.
Thank you very much. I suggest we move on to the second part of the discussion to speak about European harmonization, regulatory harmonization. Just to explain to the audience, Markus Schwaninger is CFO of ecoligo that is based in Germany. Laure Verhaeghe is co-founder and executive director of Lendosphere that is based in France. And Coenraad de Vries, co-founder and managing director of Startgreen and Oneplanetcrowd, is based in the Netherlands, but it's more complicated than that. It's wider than that. So it's a very interesting panel to understand what are the main challenges you are facing in the harmonization, in the regulatory harmonization wave that should last until November 2023, I guess. Who want to start?
I can start a bit. I mean, we like most of you know, we recently merged with Investor. So Oneplanetcrowd is now joining forces with Investor. And Investor is already a merged company from a Finnish, Austrian, German crowdfunding platform. So we are now Finnish, Austrian, German, and Netherlands. And we have now 4 permits. So we have 2 times the ECP, because also Investor applied for it, and also we applied for it. We both reached that. And we have 2 MiFID licenses, because above the threshold of 5 million, we want to use MiFID. So we have to figure out what's the best appropriate way to use no more than 2, of course, because 4 is a bit too much for our governance. But I think there's a hell of a lot of opportunity in this new harmonization, and the difficulty is also a bit in the details. So there's taxation issues, there's issues of the day processing, meaning we are used to do it in the Netherlands in a sort of digital way. In Germany, it has to be on a way that somebody really sees you in a phone call. So these sort of elements are, of course, difficult if you want to have one platform. So we have to find a smart way which fits to both countries in financial culture, in legislation, also in practical use. So that's one of the issues. So we are now trying to see how we can harmonize this to one processing and one flow. And the other thing is that, and that's all good reasons, of course, but in the current system, you still have to apply in each country to each language. I mean, for most countries, which makes it a bit more complicated, because the communication then has to be, in Italy or France or different than in Portugal. I'm not sure what the English countries are, but a few are not according to the English KISS. So that's something we have to figure out, how to do that. But in general, I mean, it gives a lot of opportunity. Like everything, you have to figure out how to do it efficient in one process in IT state, and then you end up in all sort of details. But we have now our first ECP license deal live. I mean, Investor, under the Investor brand, and it's working. So it's doable.
So congratulations, because you are, I think, the 3rd player in Europe to get the license, right?
Yeah, we were the 3rd one, and then
I remember that from our discussion. Yeah. And you are still in the middle of the process, so that's interesting as well. Laure, please.
Yeah, we applied last year, and we're still in the process with AMF, with questions and little stuff to figure out, and but it's a very good exercise, because it has the merit to put a high level of quality and of process in the interest of the investors. For the French part, there are 2 stuff that are very different from the framework we used to have. The first one is the threshold to 8 million that we used to have, and that will be down to 5 million. So from most of the platform, it's not an issue, because for little loans for SMEs or for little projects, 8 million would never have been a target. But for renewable energies that are very, very demanding in capital, it is a little, it is a pity for us because we had more and more campaigns going through this target of 8 million. So we will do with the new rule. And the other very different stuff is the status of advisory that we had. We were conseillers, and so we had the. It was compulsory for us to advise the investors, and this is no more in the new regulation. So we will lose this advisory role that we had, which is not very painful, but that is kind of different in the process we had to launch. So we're still in the process. I think it's going to be around this summer for Lendosphere. We were not in the urge because we still had this 8 million campaign going through in the platform. So this is a good timing for us, summer 2023.
Thank you. Markus?
Yes, so other than Coenraad and Laure, we don't have the license yet, and we also haven't started the application process yet. So I can't tell from experience how the process looks like in Germany. We had, from what I'm hearing from other players in the German market, is that our regulator is accepting licenses now, and the process seems to be in place, and first companies have started to apply for the license, but there is no, at least to my knowledge, no license issued yet in Germany. I think in general, the EU harmonization is of course a very important and great idea. And I think that's really the way to go, that we see the European Union as a capital union, and really important. What I find a bit tricky is that that then the details of applying for the license, the details of liability regimes and so on is quite different in the individual markets. For example, one of the hurdles in the German markets that we are having is that that putting the European regulation into German law and practice was coming with a liability regime where even my employees that would be working on legal documents would have personal liability for these documents. And that is, of course, a liability regime that is much stricter than for all the other capital market laws that we are having in Germany. So that is currently work in progress to talk with the policymakers to explain then that this is much more strict than everything else that we see in the German market. Work in progress, but that's of course for me, which is sad to see, because the idea is great and the steps are the right to harmonize within the European Union, but then still, I mean, we have been also talking beforehand how the application process is. It's in every country, it's different and very unique. You have different specific countries, specific laws that make it, that still pose a lot of hurdles for us in the practice, while the idea is great. So I think first step done right. We now need to get into the real harmonization also in practice, and that is what I see where there's still room for improvement. But I think such conferences are also the right place to address this, to exchange with each other and see how we can all work towards that common goal of really having this harmonization also in practice. So well done also here to France hosting us for this event.
Thank you, Markus. One question about harmonization. When we speak about regulatory regulation, we speak about higher standards. We have seen recently appearing a deep trend of blockchain benefits for transparency or tracking operations. Have you made some experiments about that? Do you think there's a future for the crowdfunding unified European market? Can you share your feeling about this? Because on the paper it seems obvious, but I think the reality is probably more complex than that. Hello?
Perhaps to start on that topic, we've done, it was possible in France to do an experimentation on the blockchain only for the mini-bond contract. So it was very specific and very precise, and there was not so many added value to do the process and the experimentation. So and when you go on site and when you speak to people that are the real value of our platform, it's the investors and the ability to finance the project. Crowdfunding is already something. You have to invest online. You don't know the people that are behind the platform. It's new for you to invest in renewable energy project. So if you put blockchain or metaverse or whatever that complexifies the process, it could be counterproductive for the growth of the platform. So I think it will come if it gives a real value to the platform and to the investor process, especially for a secondary market, for example. But it's still the very beginning of it. And nowadays, we don't think it's the priority for the development of Lendosphere. But I think there is still a huge work to do on explaining what is crowdfunding, explaining how you can invest as local people or investor, how you can invest directly in renewable energy project, how you can take equity or give loans to it. And there is a strong demand for real assets and for green assets in France. I don't know for, and so what we concentrate on is just to find the best project, do the best due deal, and increase our good quality investor community.
Loud and clear. Coenraad.
Yeah, I think the future will be, of course, that tokenization, blockchain will combine with crowdfunding or direct placements in the future. And it will be really powerful. And like, I mean, my mission is that it takes a it takes a while because financial innovation. I mean, we've now been busy with crowdfunding for 10 years, and that sounds long. But if you look to financial innovation, it's not so long because you need to go to the cycle of, you know, placing money, get returns, build trust. So we have now, you need at least 5 to 8 years to build the trust with your investor that you can really make the returns for them. And we have proven it. Most of the platforms here have proven it. Most platforms in the Netherlands have proven it. So crowdfunding is now here to stay. And the next step will be, of course, liquidity. Because if you place loans or equity, you want to have some sort of liquidity in the market. And there blockchain could really help, because we see blockchain as a way to administrate your assets. I still believe in asset-based finance. So I'm not talking about coins or tokenization without having any real asset behind it. But if you can use it for you know, keeping out the broker, then you have actually a really efficient model, because then you could have either direct placement, so no fund in between, and you could have liquidity without a broker, which is, you know, actually very efficient if you want to have a capital market. So, but this is like all the new stuff in the financial industry. It will take a couple, 10 years, I think, before we really are entering into this new world. But if you look at it, then for me it's undoubtable the future that we will have a combination of blockchain and yeah, crowdfunding, because it will make the market liquid in that way.
Markus? I could repeat a lot what was said already. I'm gonna spare that, but I'm sharing the perspective. Basically, I think for the crowdfunding to be successful and for us being active in emerging markets, trust is really the key. So we focus on everything that is trust building and everything that is bringing new technologies that the majority of people are not aware is something that is rather trust reducing, because they don't understand it, they don't understand the benefit of it. So in order to introduce something new successfully, you need to educate a lot. You need to go through the cycle, as Coenraad said, of years of trust building. So that's why we are quite hesitant at the moment to work with blockchain-based solutions. But there are certainly the mentioned elements that could make sense, ranging from secondary markets and everything that we have heard.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the third part, energy independence. Do you think that the trend we observe, the deep trend in green finance, will lead each people to look for being its own producers? And do you think that crowdfunding could help for that? What is your feeling about this? Who wants to start? Markus?
I can go first. So there's two perspectives that I want to bring in here. So first of all, the perspective of the European and sustainability development that we see here in Europe. So I think it's becoming really a big mainstream trend to go sustainable, and that really has all the aspects in it, from producing your own power. So when we do surveys also with our own crowd investors, and we are asking them what experience do they have with solar, a lot of them have a solar system on the roof if they own a house or have invested into solar projects in Europe or Germany already. So this is really becoming a trend to think about sustainability holistically, have their own solar project on the roof, but also try to offset their carbon footprint with investments that they are doing. So I think this is becoming really one trend, that people look at this holistically and with all sorts of angles that you have on the sustainability side, and in particular also on the energy side, because we all know that this is quite carbon intensive. If we look at emerging markets, we see a lot of movement, and I'm here having, of course, the perspective what commercial industrial clients are doing, so not so much on the private household individual, because that's not where we have the touch points. But what I can confirm is that also in emerging markets for commercial industrial companies, the trend is really there to go green. And that's in particular for companies that are producing for the international markets, because in their supply chain they get pushed then. For example, we have customers also that supply to IKEA, to Adidas, Nike, and so on. And these multinationals, they want to have it green in the whole supply chain. It's topics such as ecotourism, which is leading that hotels producing their own solar power. So there's a lot of green movement. So when we started ecoligo in 2016, we were talking to clients, and it was mainly about the cost benefits. So we were really showing them you can save so much money with going for solar, and that was the key selling argument. And that has really changed, and that has changed in particular in the last 2 years, where we are seeing that the topic of getting green is really becoming a selling proposition which hasn't been there before. And I think that's a very, very positive trend, and something that makes me really positive also about the future climate. So yeah, very happy about this development.
Coenraad?
Yeah, I think what you see a lot in the Netherlands, that there's a big growth of energy cooperatives. So that means the people do their own energy, produce their own energy, and also use their own energy. What you see then is that if they are used to do that by their own solar field or a solar field close to their home, that they also think about new models. So there are a few cooperatives which we financed are making now so much money to the high energy prices that they can do local projects like buying electric cars which they can share with each other, or having energy storage projects where they have batteries to save the energy for a while in the in the rainy, cold days without wind. So the whole movement is about try to use your own energy less, but also produce your own energy, and by also financing your own energy. So it sort of comes together, and what you've seen in the Netherlands last 50 years, because we had all sort of small energy production companies in the Netherlands, which were then merged with each other and recently sold to mostly big players abroad. And you now see that there are a lot of cooperatives are getting so big that they sort of become a new energy player, but in a cooperative way. So I see new models, I see new ways of using each other's energy, and I think having cooperative finance models is really in this movement, because it's all about also sharing your money, which you produce with energy, in producing a bigger energy plant.
Laure, thank you, Coenraad.
There will be two main pillars for the energy transition and for creating this renewable energy mix that we need. It's big industrial projects and the need for offshore wind farms with lots of capacity, and industrial size solar panels or wind turbine onshore, biomass and biogas and everything. And combined with this industrial size project that will do the main capacity megawatt that we need, there is an absolutely need for local individual projects that are very strong and very efficient to do the education part and to also do the valorization of the local resources at a very little level that the companies can't address. So I think really we need both. On Lendosphere we only finance the industrial one, but it's very important to address both directions. From the French point of view, we are still late. We are the only European state that has not achieved the renewable energy target that were our target for 2020. There is an acceleration law for renewable energy that have just been voted. Not sure it will do the job for the acceleration, but I think people are ready and people want renewable energy. They really understood last year the need for this local renewable energy. They understood that it was competitive. They understood it was very benefit for their own resources and their own revenues. And crowdfunding helps a lot for that education. Also what you've said about the confidence and the trust is very important, and the track record now of the renewable energy platform is one of the best on all the sectors of the crowdfunding. This is very, very precious for us because it shows that the renewable energies are a resilient source of energy, and a source of energy that is the only one that is able to involve a local investor in their financing.
Thank you very much. I was wondering, is there an opportunity to partner not only with banks but also with big electric giants? Is this something that is also you think will help this hybrid model that you described? Do you have some experience? Do you see a new trend? Sorry? The cooperation with the banks? Yes. No, not only cooperation with banks, but with electric giants and industrials. Do you think it's mature enough?
Yeah, I think it took a while, 5 years. Then we had a cooperation with the Rabobank, which is the largest bank in the Netherlands on project finance. And now we have cooperation with all the banks in the mean that we are accepted by their risk policy. So if they do a senior debt in a regional energy project, we are completely accepted as the party who can arrange the local financing, and which is really important because also for the bank it's really, you know, they want to have they don't want to have any problems in their creditor or in their loan agreement. So yeah, we see a lot of option to actually cooperate with the banks. Because if you look to a regional energy project, it needs, like Laure said, needs a lot of money. It's capital intensive, so you need also the senior debt for against a low interest rate to make the returns on the project. So normally in the Netherlands 70 or 80% is still provided by the bank, which is perfect, fine, at a low interest rate. Even in this market, which of course went up, but still is lower. And then we can do the local participation or financing round with a junior debt, which is met a much better return. So yeah, I think you should cooperate.
Yeah, we have to cooperate because the biggest part of the financing is given by the bank. We can give loans before the bank arrive or in the same time with on a smaller part. And with big energy companies, we already do cooperation with them. In France, you have a special, in the national tenders, you have a special incentive to do crowdfunding. You get a better tariff on your electricity if you do crowdfunding. So we do financing crowdfunding with EDF Renewable, with NG Green, for example, with CNR, with very big companies. They don't need money for financing the project, of course, but they need local investors, and they are very pleased to get the incentive on the tariff of the electricity. So, and it's EDF Renewable was our second client. They were very pleased to find a good solution, efficient, simple to launch, to get these local investors in the project and to get a better development part of the project.
Markus?
I think when it comes to the energy giants, whether it's a utility or oil and gas company and emerging markets, we definitely see them around, mostly on the big utility scale projects though. So really the multi-million-dollar projects feeding into the grid. So that's where you typically find these players. What I observe as a trend though, and that has not started recently, but I would say probably 10 years ago or so already, when I was first living in Kenya, that all the big utilities also from Germany have been around and looking for new business, because they really see that in Europe the market is somewhat saturated. They have to find new business models in Germany, but also new business models globally. What they are struggling though all with is to get into new business models and do this in a cost-efficient way. And that is which has led to a lot of unsuccessful attempts from the big energy giants to set up really specific business themselves in emerging markets. Some have tested something, then closed it down again. Others are more going the road of acquiring companies. So it can be for a company being active in the solar industry in emerging markets. It could be that at some point a utility or oil and gas company is knocking in the door and telling them, yeah, I would like to buy you. And that is some transactions that we have seen recently, like a company, Daystar Power, that is doing something similar like we do, but in West Africa and Nigeria particularly, has just been bought by Shell. So these players look into these markets when it comes to project finance, then really on the utility scale side, but else they're looking for acquisition targets to basically expand their business models and expand their global reach.
Thank you, Markus. So just to finish, can you just in a few words explain to us how do you think that the crowdfunding industry could become more attractive to European citizens based on what we have discussed? Just to give a few keywords to finish.
I think it's obvious, right? I mean, crowdfunding takes out the middleman. If you look to my portfolio, my personal portfolio, last 10 years, it's doing much better than my fund investments because it's less costs and it's direct investing. So it's more flexible and less cost with the direct involvement. So the next step will be tradability, as we discussed. And if we also combine that, then it will be an excellent model for anybody who wants to build up a renewable energy investment portfolio.
Okay. Laure?
We've made 1/3 of our global volume last year.
Okay.
It's increasing very fast because we are, I think, one of the only way to invest directly in the green project and to get this transparency and this confidence in the project. As soon as the platform do the job on the due deal and the financing part, I think there is a highway for us. We have good track records. Renewable energy will go faster and faster. I think in the green finance way of doing it, we are away from greenwashing polemics and everything. So I think there will be a huge demand for crowdfunding in renewable energies, and the harmonization of the market is a very good stuff for all of us.
Okay. Markus, in a few words. It's the end.
Yes, I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg, and this trend is really just starting and beginning. And I think sustainable finance will really become the mega trend in this decade. I'm fully sure about this. And I think this is coming from a couple of factors. People want to understand where their money goes. Even Germans that love Deutsche Bank, but like the biggest bank in Germany, they have understood now that if I put my money at Deutsche Bank, the money will go and do not the good thing that I have in mind. So people really want to understand where their money goes, and I think there's no more powerful way than crowd investing, where people can really select the individual projects and have it really clear where their money is going. And I think this tangibility and transparency is really becoming so key, and especially also for the new generations, to really see that they can have an impact with their money. And that's why I really think the crowd investing combined with the sustainability aspect and all the impact it generates will be super powerful, and we are just at the very, very beginning of a huge trend.
Thank you. I think we can applaud our expert. Thank you very much. Laure Verhaeghe from Lendosphere, Coenraad de Vries from Startgreen and Oneplanetcrowd, and Markus Schwaninger from ecoligo. Thank you very much.